Oh yeah, so hello and welcome back to the Conversation Masterclass organized by ConvoGrid. So last week what we saw was actually about the different conversational interfaces. So we saw about how people can use text sort of inputs, which is very common, which you see in all of these chatbots that you see on websites and so on. So the advantage of that is that it's fast, of course, and you can give suggested questions like this. And apart from that, it's easy to actually streamline the responses because you know exactly what the user is saying without having to interpret it, especially something like a voice interface. And yeah, so yes, you can set it to provide image responses, but the only issue is that it's not very intuitive because people have to type with it. And yeah, I can't understand sentiments. Yeah, and also we saw about voice sort of inputs, which is available in Siri, Gemini, and so on. But the only issue is that yeah, the same issues similar to text. Still, we don't really have tone analysis yet. There are some tools that do have, but not very common. And yeah, it's very likely that the bot mishears something that you say and then it misunderstands and gives you a hallucinated response or maybe an incorrect response. But yeah, it's very interactive because you can have a continuous conversation, like I showed with the Gemini interaction. Yeah, and then there's also visual chat interfaces where you can feel like you're talking to a real chat assistant that's available. And there are tools to make these as well. And yeah, we also have real life robots that are available. So these are different types of interfaces that we can actually deal with. And each of them has their own advantages and disadvantages. So now let's take a look into something different. Let's take a look into how we can create a text-based interface because that's what we mostly deal with. So we'll be showing you today how you can use something like Voiceflow and also ConverGrid to create a chatbot. So this will also probably be structured in two classes because of the time limits. We want to keep it short so that you can get it in bite-sized content. So yeah, let's get started. So one of the things that we need to think about is the platform because different platforms have different strengths and weaknesses. So Voiceflow gives you a interface where you can actually use both AI and you can use your own custom responses as well. So it makes it easier to create a chatbot, of course. The only difference between Voiceflow and ConvoGrid, I would say, is that ConvoGrid you don't really need to specify the flow or anything because the bot is smart enough to detect and identify and switch the context accordingly. But in Voiceflow, you can do it on your own. You have more manual control over it. So that is the sort of the difference that you have. So let's take a look at Voiceflow first. So yeah, Voiceflow. Let me just connect this. So it's easy. Yeah. So Voiceflow has the advantages that can set the flows and context. Maybe it's more like the intent. Yeah, and if you look at ConvoGrid on the other hand, it's so we have grid and the advantages of ConvoGrid are keep it approved is that identify and switch context. Yeah, so that's the sort of the difference between the two. Now let's take a look at how you can actually use voice flow first. So setting up a voice flow account is pretty simple. Like what you need to do is you just need to go to voiceflow.com. And Voiceflow is a tool that is good, is really used for prototyping conversations. So, especially previously, before AI became popular, Voiceflow was used to prototype conversations. So, you can easily create a conversation flow and see how the bot will respond for different responses. Yeah, so you can just simply click continue with Google, but I'll just use the account that I already have. Yeah, already have an account. Just log into it. Yeah. So this is just I'm just showing you a bot that I created as a movie bot. So this was I tried to follow a similar architecture to ConverGrid so that it will actually identify and do a loop instead of creating a flow. So this is the sort of the idea of voice flow. So we have the start node. So in the start node you can set different things. So for example you can set let me just create a new page. Let's call this CG like flow, for example. And yeah, so you get this thing start or trigger. So yeah, so once we open a new workspace, because I didn't use the original workspace, so we have the triggers that we can use. So let me just set it to, I'll just rename this trigger as start, because then it's easy for me to understand. But if you use the start here, it should pretty much show you the proper one. So now you can easily set the bot to give a different response. So you can say, make it, for example, say hello and welcome to movie bot, for example. And you can generate variants. So let me just generate 5 variants. So as you can see, it generates variants. So now if I click play here, or if I click play here when it was in the start page, then it should pretty much work. So let me just try resetting the boot and run again. Hello and thank you for using MovieBot. So every time it gives a different one of the intents that you have set here, one of the messages. So you can of course customize all of these things. You can edit all of these things, so it will show it appropriately. And now what we can do is we can actually listen to what the user is saying. So let's just capture what the user is saying to an entity. So let's call this as request and response. So these are API terminologies. So just using it. Yeah, let's not use entities. Let's use the entire user reply. And then let's get the last utterance. So we are saving the response, the what the user sends message to the request there. So I'll just say maybe what would like to watch. I think that would make it more sense for the user instead of just putting hello, how are you? Or hello, welcome to this. Let's generate 5 variants. Okay, what can I help you find? Okay, those are all good questions. So now let's set it to give a response accordingly. So let's set it to give a message reply. So now what I'm going to say the bot to do is I'm going to say it to, okay, so you can give different variants of course, uh, based on the user's last utterance, user's message, reply with a movie suggestion. Okay. So I'm not sure whether the bot has movies in its database, but let's see whether it works. The movie. Okay. So this literally gives the same thing that I put as a message. Why? Because it's not actually capturing the message. So what we need to actually use is prompt, not the. Oh, yeah. So what we can do is we can say based on the user's last response, reply with a movie suggestion, and we can set here system prompt. So you can use a person or anything here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say you are a movie suggestion bot and you know a lot about movies. So this is like giving an insight to the bot to understand what exactly it should do. So what I can do is I can create a variable here. Uh, yeah, that's for last response. What I want to create is I want to create a new variable. Okay, for now let's just use this. And yeah, I think okay, I can create a variable like this. Default value, okay. So I'm going to call this as what persona. So I can use this variable wherever I want to. I don't need to keep copying that message everywhere. That's the sort of the advantage of having a variable. See now I have a variable called what persona. So I don't need this message because it sets it by default based on your persona. And I'm going to also set based on a persona, and I'm going to bring the input the persona of course. You don't need to, it's not mandatory, but yeah, just did it. You are a movie suggestion bot. is friendly and supportive. Okay, so now I saved it. Cool. So let me just try running. Suggest me a movie. Seems like reply appropriately. Let's make it because I have the last response is the same thing, so it doesn't really make sense to say that. Okay, let's take a look at the person. Okay, so based on the user's last message, reply appropriately based on your persona, or ask the if you are not clear, ask the more information. I think this would help the bot even more. Yeah, movie to watch. Let's make it. I think the model also has a bit of an impact. Let's change it from haiku to turbo is good, but usually haiku is good, but it seems like it's struggling a bit. So let's use turbo, and let's the tokens is fine. The more tokens that you use, the more costly it becomes. Of course, see, this is better. So haiku doesn't really work too well. Okay, so yeah, you can of course always switch between models and improve the conversation response. So now we have a pretty working flow which we can use. So let's call this prompt as well. How do I rename it? Okay, it doesn't let me rename the prompt, which is weird. Okay, I can rename it here. Okay. Okay, we can rename it here. My bad. Okay, so let's call this as get request. I'm just using technical words which are not really related to conversation design, but just for the heck of it. So what I'm doing is I'm getting the get request, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it to connect to this, of course. And next, I'm going to get the request, and I'm going to again create a copy of this, duplicate this, and I'm going to bring it here. So now I can get it again, and I think, can loop it back. So that way I have a flow. I mean, this is not the ideal intention of voice flow. You're supposed to be making the whole flow. For example, you can make a streamline, for example, like in the sense you can ask what would you like to watch, then it says you can give options like watch horror film or whatever, and then you can continue that flow. You can pick the flow, but what I'm doing is I'm trying to show how it works with even ConverGrid works. It's sort of similar way. So we have this looping structure which is built in. The horror movie. Okay, seems like it's not perfect. And I wouldn't blame it because I didn't really define it to get it appropriate. Based on the last response and the based on the user's message and your last, you can of course define history and things, but I'm not going to. Okay, seems that the variables don't work. Last utterance is what I need. I think it's much better if I just test it here. And let's, I think it's good if we set this to a variable. But I think last, oh, I think that I understood the mistake. This is last, this should be last utterance. And this should be last response. Okay, that was the error. That was why it wasn't working. Because it didn't have a way to detect the last utterance. I had saved the reply to last utterance, right? So it didn't really. Now it should work. See, it works. Are you looking for something? Anyways, let's just say Tarantino. His movie. See, so this is similar to how ConvoGrid works actually. So that's what I wanted to buy him. Yeah, so it's not perfect. I think mostly because it doesn't really have all a huge database of movies. So because I'm using OpenAI's 3.5 Turbo model, so yes, I think that's why it doesn't really give a movie. But yeah, that's the basic idea. So, but traditionally, what people do in voice flow is they have. Let me just start a new trigger, uh, and let's call this as movie. Okay. So now what? Let's just say this is what people usually do. So they put the message and they say, "Hello, what would like to watch?" And then let's generate variants. This one variant would do. Three variants would also be fine. Okay. So now what would you like to watch? And then we can give. These are most of the people typically do is so then they set different intents that it will get triggered to. So like say you use a learn button. So learn button you can set it to go to a different path, and you can also set some other triggers. So let's just call this as sample. And we can set another talk message. So these are the traditional flow people use. So what would any so the purpose of this variance is so that it's dynamic. It doesn't give the same sort of the content every time. I'm just putting some random gibberish to show it what is possible. But let's just run the bot now. What would you like to watch? Okay, so it didn't give the suggestions, which is sort of weird. I think we have to train it as well. Where are the buttons? Ah, okay. I think the reason is I didn't really add the button. Yeah, I should have added a button. My bad. Okay, so let's just add learn. No. Oh, there. Okay, now it should work. See, it gives. So if I click learn more, it will go to a learn more flow. You notice, right? It jumped to this flow. And if someone clicks in this flow, if they click jump here, see, it jumps to this flow. So you can similarly you can extend this and you can make a different flow. You can add images. You can do a lot of things. So that is the traditional sort of the way that people used to do conversation design. But now with AI and everything, this happens automatically. So ConverGrid also does this exactly. So you can't really see it; it happens behind the hood, but it's something similar to this loop. So you don't need to manually define this flow anymore. Otherwise, previously you had to define all of these flows, and yeah, it is engaging in a way because then engaging in the sense you can add pictures and anything because you know exactly what the user is choosing. You know the choices of the user. But if you are using something like this, you can't really predict it. So you have to think about different scenarios and use prompting to make it work. But in this situation, you can predict. So you know exactly what the user is gonna do. You can take him to that flow. So that's the sort of the difference between voice flow and convert. So apart from that, yeah, you can use images, you can use cards, you can use carousels. You can just experiment and see how voice flow works, and there's a lot of tutorials. But what we wanted to do is just show you how you can do just a basic idea about how you can do it, how it differs with the convergent architecture. So convergent architecture is something like this, and this is a sort of the traditional architecture. Yeah, so now let's move on to ConvoGrid actually. So how we do things in ConvoGrid. So the difference between how we do things in ConvoGrid and voice flow, like I mentioned, is you can't really see this flow. You can't really see all of these things happens under the hood. So you have really no way to see how it all happens. So yeah, so the difference between ConvoGrid and other platforms is that. So let's go to beta.convogrid.ai. So you can just click sign up today once you come to convogrid.ai. And yeah, so then you get greeted by this homepage, which I may or may not have shown you before. So what you can do is, yeah, you can see our chatty the owl, which you can interact with, how to make a bot, and it will give you the instructions if you didn't really catch what I said, but you can of course refer this. Yeah, so it gives you visit the create bot section, import them, trying it out, and publish it. Yeah, this is it gives you a link to a documentation. Oops, let's just start it off. Yeah, so you can get access to the documentation over here. So it shows you how you can, what are the sections that you need to follow to get a bot up and running. So let's just create a bot. So once you're in the ConvoGrid page, let it go. Okay. So once you're in the ConvoGrid page, you can create a bot. So just simply create a bot. You can use different sources. You can use YouTube, you can add multiple links or channels, and the bot will be able to scrape them. Also, you can use websites. So let's just use our documentation itself. So let's just use those articles, set it to a page, because if you crawl the full website, it's going to take much more effort and it's going to make things a lot more complex. And yeah, let's use some other links as well. And yeah, let's use the other link too. So apart from that, if you have documents, you can add those documents as well. We support all of these formats. And yeah, you can add a picture, how you would want the bot to be identified. Yeah. So next what you can do is you can set a bot name. So let's call this as bot guide, and let's give it some tags. Business, customs, about it's not entertainment, so let's just remove that. And we didn't use any YouTube content, so we don't really need that. And let's just add maybe short description and click create bot. Okay. So now it will pause the bot temporarily. You can click update and resume and make sure that you click a page. And yeah, we need a content summary. So this is not mandatory, but it gets generated automatically if you use YouTube. But since we did not, it requires a content summary. But it's not really, you don't really need to reinvent anything. You can just mention the same thing. And yeah, your bot is ready. So now if you ask something, it should be able to respond using the information that you provided. See, we provide. So if you ask how to make a bot, voila, it works. So yes, that's the sort of the difference. You notice, right? We didn't really need to go through all of this hassle of setting up all of this first because this happens automatically. Yeah, and I'll show you later how in the next session I'll actually show you how you can customize this, especially if you have access to a backend platform which we probably will release to you all down the line. I'll show you how you can customize how the bot you has a proper personality and all of those aspects, so that the bot will be more personal and much more interactive, something similar to how Chatty works, which you can see here. So Chatty, you can notice all of the messages. It talks like an owl. It makes owl noises. Is that a hoot? Isn't that a hoot? See all of these messages because we have set a personality that Chatty has an owl personality. So that's the reason. So next session we'll probably touch upon that how you can actually use ConverGrid backend to create a bot and customize it. And yeah, so this is in ready state, and I'll publish it so that anyone can try it. So if you're watching the video, you can of course try it. So I'll just publish it so you can try it out. Yeah. Don't mind the logo. It's just a random logo. Yeah, and yeah, let me just add a screenshot of both of this to the Figma file so that you can see what we did. So this is Voiceflow and this is ConvoGrid. ConvoGrid, the difference is you don't, I mean, you can do it, but it's in our backend. So we'll be, of course, showing you how it works subsequently. Yeah, so see you guys in the next one.